Hello students, today we are going to understand the transportation in living organisms. Now living organisms, whether they are unicellular or multicellular organisms, they show a very important property of exchange of materials with their surrounding as well as in between their cells and the parts of their body. So the nutrients or the oxygen that are taken inside the body, and inside the body they are transported from one cell to another cell in order to carry out various metabolic activities inside the body. And after those metabolic activities, the waste materials which are generated, those waste materials are removed outside the body. This whole process is called as transportation. Now, how is this transportation process done? It is done by two ways. First is diffusion and second is active transportation or active transport. Now, in this process of diffusion, what happens? The molecules, they move from higher concentration to lower concentration. And this process of diffusion is a passive process, means here the energy is not required to carry out this process. There is no need of energy to carry on this process, whereas in active transportation it occurs in between the cells, it happens in between the cells, and this process is an active process, means here the energy is required to carry out this process, or energy is needed to carry out this process, that is active transportation. So in transportation, nutrients are taken inside the cell by diffusion and are transported by active transportation, and the removal of waste is done by diffusion again. So when the nutrients are taken inside the body, they are taken by the process of diffusion. They are diffused inside the body or the cell. Now here inside the body, these nutrients are transported from one cell to another cell by the active transportation. They are transported from one cell to another cell by active transportation, and here the various metabolic activities, they take place, and the wastes are generated, waste materials are generated. Those waste materials are removed outside the body again by the process of diffusion. So this whole process, that is taking in the nutrients by diffusion, transporting them from one cell to another cell by active transportation, and removing the waste materials again by the diffusion, this whole process is called as transportation. This whole process is called as transportation. Now there is another term in your textbook, that is cyclosis. Now what is this cyclosis? It is also called as protoplasmic streaming or cytoplasmic streaming. Now as we know, inside the cell there are various cell organelles such as nucleus, mitochondria, ribosomes, Golgi complex, etc. Like this, various cell organelles are present inside the cell, and there is a fluid like structure which is present inside the cell, that is the protoplasm or cytoplasm. Now what this fluid does, this protoplasm moves around the nucleus. It moves around the nucleus inside the cell, and this movement of the protoplasm provides energy and nutrients to the cell organelles. The movement of this protoplasm provides energy and nutrients to the cell organelles which are present inside the cell. And this movement of protoplasm is called as cyclosis. The movement of this protoplasm round and round around the nucleus, this movement is called as cyclosis, or it is also called as protoplasmic streaming or cytoplasmic streaming. And as this process occurs inside the cell, it happens inside the cell, so that's why it is called as intracellular transportation, because it occurs inside the cell. That's why intracellular transportation. Now this type of transportation is seen in the unicellular organisms like Parenchyma, amoeba, root hair of the plants, also in the WBCs of humans. So this type of transportation is seen in 4 different cells: paramecium, amoeba, root hair of the plants, and the WBCs in human. This is the intracellular transportation. Then there is another term, that is extracellular transportation. Now this extracellular transportation, this is the transport of nutrients from one cell to another cell. Here it was within the cell, inside the cell, and here it is now from one cell to another cell. That is transport of nutrients from one cell to another cell. That's why it is called as extracellular transportation. And it is done with the help of water, blood, lymph or hemolymph. Here, whereas in intracellular transportation it was done by protoplasm or cytoplasm, here it is done by water, blood, lymph or hemolymph. Now water is used for transportation in animals like porifera, that is sponges. As we know that the sponges have pores on their body surfaces. Those pores are called as ostia. Now from these pores water gushes inside the body of sponges, and along with the water the nutrients and the gases are also provided to the sponges, the body of sponges. Another example is Cnidaria, that is hydra. In hydra also, through the mouth the water enters inside and the nutrients and the gases are provided to the body of the hydra. Whereas blood is used for transportation in humans. Lymph and hemolymph are used in the insects. Now in flatworms, that is platyhelminths, here the transportation or circulation is seen, that is called as parenchymal circulation. Now here in the platyhelminths, what happens? There is a fluid space in between the parenchymatous tissue, parenchyma tissue of that animal, of that worm, and the body walls. The parenchyma tissue and the body walls, there is a space, fluid space, and that space it is used for the distribution or transportation of nutrients or the gases. So that is called as parenchymal circulation. Whereas in the roundworms, that is S.A.M, here in the roundworms, the contraction and relaxation, the body of the, for example, ascaris, the body of the ascaris, it contracts and relaxes. So this contraction and relaxation helps in the transportation of nutrients as well as the gases in the ascaris. So this process of transportation can be classified in 2 ways. First, depending on the place where this process occurs. For example, it occurs inside the cell, so it is called as intracellular transportation. It occurs from one cell to another cell outside the cell, so it is called as extracellular transportation. So depending upon the place where this transportation process occurs or takes place, it is classified into intracellular and extracellular transportation. Second, that is depending upon the fluid which is used for the transportation. For example, water, blood, lymph and hemolymph. So it is classified depending upon the fluid which is used for the transportation, as well as the place which where the process takes place, it is classified. So this is the transportation in living organisms. In another part, we will see how the blood is used for the transportation in humans. That is we are going to learn human circulatory system.